I am Shellby Walker, and this is my AEP 855 Educational Leadership Final Project on Race, Class, Access, Gender, and Equity. These are the articles that I found. I retrieved all of these articles from Education Week. The first article I chose was Grades Found to Give Early Warning on ELL Dropouts. I chose this article for race. This article discussed the early warning signs of ELL students at most risk for dropping out of high school. These early warning signs consisted of absence rates, course failure their freshman year, grade point average, and number of credit earned. These signs were more predictive than whether or not they were English proficient or have interruptions in their schooling. They could also be used to detect ELL students who were not on track to graduate. With these signs, students could be identified earlier and intervention could be implemented. In this study, grade point average was found to be the most accurate predictor of future graduation. When grade point average was used, it was effective in identifying students 82% of the time. This percentage was significantly higher than the language proficiency levels were used to identify future graduation. When language proficiency levels were used, those students were only identified accurately 60% of the time. This study was implemented in the Chicago Public Schools. The participants that were used were Hispanic, white, and Asian cultures, and these students were first-time freshmen. They were followed for 5 years until their potential graduation. The performances were compared of ELLs and non-ELLs, and 5 subgroups of Hispanic students were compared with each other. The new ELL students were students that identified in 6th grade or later and entered 9th grade, still designated as an ELL. The long-term ELLs were students that were first identified prior to 6th grade, and they had not yet gained proficiency prior to entering 9th grade. The recently proficient students were former ELLs that reached proficiency between 6th and 8th grade. Long-term proficient were students that were former ELLs that had already reached proficiency before the 6th grade. Never ELLs were students that were native English speakers but had scored high enough to enter the Chicago school system and be classified proficient in English. The newest ELLs did as well or better than their peers in other groups in the 9th grade class. The new ELLs on average earned around a C minus grade point average. These students had failed under 2 classes, missed around 6 days of school each semester. 2/3 of these students were on track to graduate as of the end of their freshman year. New ELL's graduation rate was 57%. The long-term ELL's graduation rate was 52%, and the long-term proficient graduation rate was 68%. The graduation rate for the district was at 61%. Although the percentages were not where they hoped they would be, they decided that there are other factors that need to be determined and factored in. For gender, I chose the article STEM Gender Gap Pronounced in the U.S. When the gender gap in STEM education is discussed, the discussion revolves typically around the low portion of women with college majors and careers in science, math, technology, and engineering. Data that they showed recently showed that these disparities are actually happening in K-12 classrooms also. That it showed that it was not taking place internationally, but in the U.S. Internationally, it showed that there was no measurable difference in science scores between girls and boys. It is believed that gender gap may be due to the kind of tests, the self-confidence of the students, and the expectations that they have. Gender gaps are typically smaller in students that are low income, Black, or Hispanic. Girls are behind boys in scoring on 10 STEM subjects that are tested. It is being determined whether the factor of stereotype threat is creating anxiety for certain population groups. These groups would be racial and ethnic minorities or females. This happens when they face a negative stereotype in certain situations. Data shows that boys are outscoring girls consistently in science and math, and the gaps found in the US are among the largest. This is the article I chose for class, New Student Poverty Measures Proposed for National Tests. It discussed how does a student's home and community resources affect their academic success or achievement, and that we need to look beyond a traditional measure of just the family income, community, and school supports for learning. There are multiple dimensions involved. It cannot be just broken down into low and high groups. There is a bigger picture beyond understanding students' characteristics based on whether they are on free or reduced lunches. There is an incomplete picture given about the students in poverty and no picture given of students who don't qualify. There have been many questions asked in regards to qualifying for free and reduced lunches. These questions in the past have been very general, like do you have a washer or dryer, or do you have a cell phone? And typically you're finding that everybody has those things now, oddly enough, whether they can afford them or not. New questions are being encouraged to be asked, and they are in three groups. They're proposed new core SES indicators, potential expanded SES indicators, and potential additional context indicators. The new core SES indicators are based on questions about family income, their home possessions that can be linked to educational support, their parents' educational attainment, and their parents' occupational status. Potential expanded SES indicators are family structure, the stability of the family, and presence of extended family and supportive adults in their students' environments. The neighborhood, what the poverty or linguistic isolation, the percentage of unemployed adults, or do they have availability of museums and parks? Are they safe when walking anywhere? The school, the SES composition of students at the school the child attends. Potential additional context indicators are physical stressor. This would be such like illness rates, or are there any environmental problems? Psychological stressors would be what the crime levels in the school and the community are. Psychological protectors would be whether the student has a positive or negative perception of their parent involvement and expectations. All of these indicators are being used to obtain a better picture of our students who qualify for free and reduced lunches. On access, I chose the article, School Districts Are Under Pressure to Modernize. Schools, we don't have the expertise that they need to effectively design and implement a network, and obviously creating a network and buying a broadband is a lot more complicated than buying pencils. We're finding that superintendents, chief technology officers, and other district leaders are working to transform their school districts into learning environments with more technology. This is obviously a challenge in making happen and requires more broadband capacity, more flexible use of federal E-rate dollars, and trying to build one-to-one technology. Also, we want stronger homeschool online connections, and there is more emphasis on professional development that focuses on the needs of students when implementing technology. Schools are obviously under a lot of pressure to integrate more technology in the classrooms. They want to use the technology to track student performance and to provide guidance for teachers to make the instructional adjustments in real time. They want to also offer students access to a variety of technological devices. With the implementation of the Common Core standards, our schools are definitely going to have to be prepared to provide technology that is needed. It is tough for districts to meet the needs of technology implementation when dealing with tight budgets. I think we all know that. Some districts have implemented and incorporated the policy of bring your own device to compensate for the lack of technology their district may have. With the progressive development of technology implementation, school districts are using online professional development programs for teachers to use and learn at their own pace. Schools are also making progress with technology, but it seems that we have a long ways to go, and with technology being ever growing and so essential in our society, it's kind of a factor of will we ever catch up. The article I chose for equity was equity and quality. Is it possible to get both? The United States is ranked lower on a chart that discusses countries that are equally successful in providing students with an education that obtains both equity and quality. The U.S. is saved by the fact that our reading performance is actually slightly above average. If we used our mathematics scores, we would actually rank in the lower region of the chart, making us among the lowest performing countries in both equity and quality. This report identified 5 areas we should be looking for answers. We need to postpone tracking until upper secondary, eliminate grade repetition, making funding responsive to needs, manage school choice to avoid inequalities, and design secondary pathways. Postponing tracking until upper and secondary, what they want you to do is postpone it till the 9th or 10th grade. This is what top countries are typically doing. Up until this time, they have the same demanding curriculum for all students. They rarely do the ability grouping. Ability grouping is huge in the American education and usually starts as early as the 1st grade. They feel as though when students are assigned to low ability groups at a young age and stay in them for years to come, that their functioning is undemanding on curriculum and they are unlikely to be successful when they reach more demanding curriculum in secondary grades. They believe when high standards and expectations are set, all of their students will meet them. Eliminate grade repetition. The top performing countries train their teachers to assess their students constantly. This is so any students that are falling behind, they can catch them as soon as possible. They train their teachers to be great researchers on the right solutions for students who are falling behind. They give teachers an appropriate class size so they have one-on-one time to spend with students to ensure their success. It is not pushing students forward who are not ready. They are more preparing and making sure that all students are successful in demanding curriculum. Make funding responsive to needs. These top performing countries make sure resources go to the students who are the hardest to educate instead of only giving those resources to the high achieving students. This obviously helps to ensure that students from low income families and minority homes will achieve at the same level as the students from well-to-do families. Manage school choice to avoid inequities. You often see that parents that have the resources to provide their children with great schooling options do so, and the parents who lack in resources settle when providing their children with schooling options. There's a huge difference between better performing schools and worse performing schools. They have taken strong measures to make sure their choices in school systems are as fair as possible for all parents. Some move their best performing teachers and principals to schools that are in the worst performing spectrum. This is to help provide equity in all schools. Inequities vary, obviously, in the different locations. Top performing countries place high value on choice and finding ways of providing all children equal opportunity when choosing schools. Design equivalent upper secondary pathways. They want to make it so students who are graduating are pushed and they want it to be that all of their goals can be reachable. They make paths that lead to a balanced workforce and make them attractive to students. The need for substantial academic content is essential. This assures that there is no dead ends in their success. In the U.S., at least a third of our students leave high school unable to enroll in a community college without having to take remedial courses in mathematics, English, or both.